So we'll just start our meeting like we typically do with a public forum. If anybody wanted to get up and share, comment, ask questions. We don't usually have an audience, so it's nice to like see so many people. And also like,
Nancy,
if anybody wants to share, yeah.
I think we should inform her that we only have limited time.
Yeah. Okay. So a good point is that we are on a time limit today, so we do need to end our meeting by 5:30 because there is another meeting happening in the same room later. So just a heads up for everybody. Okay. No comments. Maybe questions later. The next item on our agenda is to approve the meeting minutes from our August meeting. And I did have a note that there was a discussion that had happened that I started about expanding the grant application process or the grant applications to arts organizations that operate as not-for-profits, in addition to ones that have the tax-exempt nonprofit distinction. And so in the meeting minutes, it got captured as opening it to for-profit businesses, which I want to change that before we approve the minutes. So I think, unless there's anything else, I think we can still vote to approve them with that amendment.
So moved.
Second.
With that. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that passes. The next item on the agenda was to approve the KHOI 2021-2022 annual grant final report. That one came a little bit later to us, which was the reason. So Steve did have a question that I don't think we have an answer for. Correct. So my suggestion would be to move that to the next meeting, just so that we can wait for Brian to get back to us on that idea. So I don't think we have to motion for that. Just move it.
No,
Right. Okay.
I wouldn't think so.
Okay. So now the reason you're all here, right? That's just the stuff that nobody needs to pay attention to, is the annual grant and spring special projects grant workshop. So I'm going to move down there to use Brian's PowerPoint. Okay, so the first, so they can get this. Can everyone hear me okay on here? So the first part we're going to discuss is the annual grant process. So I know a lot of you saw the sign in as you walked in, and that is for the hearing that'll happen if you do apply for an annual grant from CODA, which maybe will come up a little bit. So we'll do the annual grants first, and then the spring special project grants. So this is the process and deadlines. Attendance at tonight's workshop is not required, but recommended, and you're already here, so you might as well just stay, right, and listen. The application is due in the city manager's office by 5 o'clock on October 14th, 2022. So make sure you make note of that. We will not consider late applications, and make sure to use the forms that are found on the CODA website. You can submit a single electronic copy to, and that is the email address you will use, cota@cityofames.org. I think in the past we have accepted physical copies if that's something that you need to do, but I think it's recommended to do an electronic copy. As I mentioned, the annual grant hearings will happen on November 7th. If you're not sure about your application, if you're going to be completing one, you don't have to sign up today. You can take down this number and call and schedule a time slot for your hearing for that November 7th date at a later time. The hearings will be held here, and it'll be about 5 minutes for CODA commissioners to ask questions about your application. Following that, the funding recommendations from CODA will be posted, I think, here in City Hall, and then I'm not exactly sure where else they get posted, but on January 16th, 2023. And I will say, I guess that's just our recommendations. That still is pending some city council approval. So to be eligible for one of the annual grants, you have to have nonprofit tax exempt status and be a non-governmental organization or agency located in the city of Ames. You have to have bylaws, a mission, et cetera, with specific arts goals. And you must not discriminate against protected classes. The bottom language is what's required if you do receive CODA funding to include on your advertising and publication materials. So part of the application will also include your express need for financial support, but also indicating that you're recruiting support financially from other sources as well, that you demonstrate a history of being fiscally responsible organizers, and then especially emphasizing who will be served by the programming and how. So we have a few questions on there asking you to identify your target audiences, and explaining how you're going to reach them and how you intend to reach them, kind of what methods you intend to use to reach that target audience. Things that are ineligible for funding in the annual grants are capital improvements, permanent supplies, tuition, salaried staff, out-of-state travel, debt reduction, hospitality expenses, which I think is food and lodging, projects outside the granting period. And so that's just, again, it's the city's fiscal year, July 1 to June 30th. Other things that you're asked to submit with your application is a summary of your organization, and a project description, promotions, assurances, and a budget and balance sheet. These things will all come in handy too when you're submitting the final grant report to the commission. Speaking of, it's like I set myself up for that you will be required to turn in a final report. And I think this is it is a permanent change that CODA initiated, that those final reports are due the last Monday of July. Hoping that gives you time to resolve your finances for if you operate on the same fiscal year, and also in plenty of time for us to review them before we actually approve them. Right? So that date this year, 2020, so that would be 2024, right? Because what we're applying for is 2023 to 2024 fiscal year. So that final report would then be due July 31st, 2024. That's hard to believe that that's happening. Okay, before I move on to the special project grants, are there questions from people here about the annual grants? Tammy?
I had an issue with some of the cells in the budget not computing right.
Okay.
And so unless I print a copy, I can't give it to work. So who should I call about?
So do they have computation already
So the issue
a place that's doing it wrong?
the cell that
Okay.
the cell is the problem. Is the first one. Like I put in like $34,291 and it shows up as 34 with nothing else. But when you click on the cell, it shows up, but it doesn't show up on the printed copy.
Gotcha.
And then it's not also totaling right at the end.
Okay. Can we make a note in the minutes? We can talk to, that would be, I think, Brian and Carly, who would look at what the functions that are already embedded into the Excel sheet are. And perhaps for this year, maybe it's easiest just to remove all of those and do it manually, but have the cells, so the cells aren't responding incorrectly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I tried to erase the cell and I couldn't get it.
Yeah, it doesn't let you.
blank out.
Doesn't let
It doesn't
you?
let me blank
It's
out.
like a PDF form. And so,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
because I've
The
had the
altered-
same issues in the past.
Same. Okay.
It'd be great if somebody was trying to fill it out.
Yeah. And then they could see what was happening. That's a good idea. Okay. That's a good good information. And I think hopefully we would have some time to get that updated for this round. If not, that explains, I guess, why a lot of times you print them, write them, and then scan them and attach them. Good to know. Okay. What were you going to say?
That's exactly-
Yeah.
And if you update it, could you let us know?
Yes.
Because it's better to do it in the
Sure.
form online.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something we'll have to check on timeline with, unfortunately, Brian, who's not here, on whether or not or what timeline that could get done. But we can definitely. I don't know what the best way is to do that.
There's an email that comes out to everybody who's applied in the past.
Okay.
So
And just
you
say
can
there.
Email blast it to everyone that's
Okay.
Applied in the past, say the framing's been corrected.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank
If
you.
you're not changing any questions or anything.
Yeah, the question shouldn't be. Yeah.
It's just that self.
Sounds good. Okay.
Yay, technology.
Good to know. Thanks. It was interesting to see just like the there was definitely group cohesion in the frustration on your faces, right? Of like that form
And it's been there a few
is
years.
really annoying. Okay, good to know. So, any other questions? Thank you for that. Okay, so we'll move on to the spring special project grants. So the purpose of these are to address opportunities and circumstances that were not anticipated for spring 2023 when you had applied last year for the 2022-2023 annual grant. And so because of that, if the program was denied funding through that annual grant process, it's not eligible for the special project grant, and unless with the caveat here that unless the original proposal was modified significantly. So these are the dates related to the spring special project grant. It's for projects occurring between January 1st and June 30th of 2023. The workshop is today. And this one has an earlier application due date, which is September 23rd. And that's just a little less than 2 weeks away. The date of the hearing will be the next CODA hearing, which is October 3rd in this room. Again, there's a sign up by the door if you're planning to apply for that, with notification given by November 7th. Because after the hearings, our meeting in October will be the hearings, and then in November will be the discussion and then approval of the grants. Your final reports for spring special project grants are due July 31st. So again, I think the eligibility is the same as far as it was for the annual grant process, so I'm not going to repeat that. Again, the need for financial support, and we do look at programs and opportunities that also have the potential to earn income if possible. And that kind of goes into the next line of also having efforts to obtain funds from somewhere else. Again, demonstrating fiscally responsible organization management, and again, the who of the audience and how you intend to reach them. I think the ineligibility is the same. So again, I'm not gonna repeat that unless there are specific questions later on. The things that you do submit for the special project grants, making sure the application is signed by someone authorized to do so on behalf of the organization. Supporting materials are not required, but a separate narrative may be accepted to fully explain the proposal if you feel like there isn't space within the application itself. Again, you're already here, but you didn't have to be here if you're applying, but we're glad you're here. But it is required attendance for the hearing, which will be that October date. Again, applications and final reports are all submitted to the city manager's office. There is the address, and again, the email is cota@cityofames.org. So for spring 2023, again, we are offering grants of up to $3,000. This is just based on the money that has been allotted to COTA for these grants. In the past, awards have been $1,000 or limited to $1,000. But we increased it last year and decided to maintain that increase. So just know that as you're asking, anything up to $3,000. This is Brian's contact information. Brian couldn't be here today. My name's Nancy. If you want my contact information later, I can give it to you. But again, that's the email address you'll need most at the bottom. Any questions about the spring special projects?
Yeah, we had one last year, and the major cost for what we were doing, we were offering classes and doing things in the building, is the continued maintenance of the building. Heating a building in the winter so that you can have people doing things. Is there a way of charging overhead or getting reimbursed for overhead for activities in the building? Other organizations have to pay rent for space. Well, we own our space, but that doesn't mean the space is cost-free. Does that make sense?
I don't know the answer to that question. Does anyone?
That's a great question for Brian.
I know. It's one of those questions.
I'm full of them.
We can definitely make a note of asking about, and so you're wanting to know if overhead could be listed as an expense that could then be paid for by one of these grants.
Everything that happens at
Yeah.
Actors gets charged rent.
Sure.
That's how we recover. It shows pay $7,000 in rent.
Mhm.
When we do any event, that event gets charged overhead, rent.
Okay, that's a good question, and we can follow up.
I wanted to submit a special project electronically. And I see at the end that there's a place to write your name and a place to press your name. And I didn't figure out how to write that, so I just printed it twice. Is that okay?
I think that that's okay now with electronic documents. You have an option of like creating an electronic signature, which is essentially, you can do it a number of different ways to use on a PDF document. But I would think that that would be fine.
I was hoping not to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that that would still be fine. But yeah, there are a number of different ways I think to sign electronically. Yeah. I'll move back while you still mull over some more questions. if you have them. Anything else to add to those?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
We'll wait and see what kind of fun stuff they come up with.
I know, it's always exciting, right? Okay, so then just a reminder of upcoming important dates. The spring 2023 special project grant applications are due September 23rd. So again, less than 2 weeks. 2023-2024 annual grant applications are due October 14th. And then the next meeting for CODA, which will also be the spring special project grant hearings, is going to happen here on October 3rd. Anything else? 10 minutes to spare, so the meeting's adjourned.